Oops. Welcome. How do you like that new intro? Hello, everybody. Welcome to my channel. My name is Margaret Pinard. I'm a historical fiction and fantasy author. And you are here on BookTube, except it's not just BookTube today. Actually, this is the Authortube Writing Conference, a special video presentation for which I will be sharing some of my experiences with the tug of war between research and writing. Both things I love, but each have their place, and sometimes we can get stuck in one or other lane. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Before I get started, I just wanted to say thank you to organizers Shannon, Esty Houston, and Devin Gambrell Clark. They are the co-chairs of the Authortube Writing Conference and doing a fabulous job. So I'm lucky to have them as teammates. And also thank you to my fabulous moderators for today, whether it's Esther or Joe of Six Cats Press or Ariadne Alexis McQuarrie in the comments. So thank you everyone for coming, watching, viewing. I hope you can take away some lessons or share your feelings with me during this live stream. So I am going to be flipping in and out of the formats from live to some edited clips. So just to tell you, I'll be answering questions in between and would love for you to pop your questions in the comment box. So I will answer any of these during the live stream and also afterwards, of course. This is my third Authortube Writing Conference, and this is my most personal share, as I've mentioned before. So I started out with event organizing because I know how to do that, and then publishing because I've done that a few times. And now we're finally getting to a writing process talk. And so that's why I'm shaking and a little nervous. So I will be sharing both facts and feelings today about researching and writing, especially for historical fiction, but it can also apply to science fiction and fantasy disciplines. And whichever you guys are more interested in will help direct our discussion and the Q&A. So again, label those with a Q in front, and I will pop up to answer any of those questions in between our video clips. Did I cover everything? I believe so. So let me just check the comments again and say hello to all the folks. You have lovely people here. Yes. Okay. So all right, I'm taking notes from the comments here. I do have a poll up. Yes, thank you, Esther. If anyone wanted to answer that, I will, during the clip, close it out, and then we could talk about that in the first Q&A. Yes, like, subscribe, do the thing. Thank you, appreciated. And all the links in there. You guys are so good. See, my mods know what's up. All right, we're good. Hey, Dee Dee's here. Yay. So we got BookTube and Authortube. Authortube Curious. Okay, so the first couple tips are just going to be a little bit of disclaimer and sort of getting into the topic and both sides of the issue, I'll say, and then why we do need to research. You can't just fling spaghetti at a wall, literally. And then also how I got here to where I am in my writing journey currently. So knock on wood, video file, go. Hey. So the first thing I'm going to cover is going to sound a little contradictory. Let's talk about the context of writing process related advice. The writing process for everyone is going to be individual and unique, or your mileage may vary, and you have to find out what works for you. Take any of the advice that resonates with you and use it in your process to make it better and get that book out. But if something feels like it doesn't apply to you, don't worry. On the other hand, some of these things that prevent us from writing as easily as we would like to are universal or close to universal. The universals of this battle are that when we are writing, we feel a resistance. Stephen Pressfield talks about this, and he's someone that I read early on in my writing journey. So when we are writing and we feel a need to procrastinate, when other things seem more important, and we have that nagging sensation that we should be writing, we know what we're supposed to be writing, but I think I can do this a little more, or I think I can work on that a little more. That's basically a fear of not doing the writing part good enough to satisfy ourselves. Basically, when I say stop researching and start writing, I am trying to describe the feeling of fear and anxiety about writing. You want to write a story that people will really connect with, but you don't know if you're good enough to do it. So you constantly want more of this and more of that, more research, more validation, more credibility. So that is the fear preventing you from writing. On the other hand, you may be in the other camp, which I think is a minority, but I'm not sure. Maybe you can weigh in on this down below. But people who are writing and they are not doing enough research, so they end up down blind alleys and then have to scrap it and rewrite. So it's either an inefficient way of writing and may stop you from finishing your goal, or it is a very discouraging way of writing and may stop you from achieving your goal. In either camp, it's sort of a cycle. It goes like this, right? I just want to give you some tools that I have found very helpful recently to get off of the research train, calm those anxieties and fears, and get back to writing. And so, what I'm going to be talking about is tools to tell if that's real or if it's fake. Are you really needing to do more research in order to continue with your storyline? Or could you leave a gap and come back later and keep going so that you keep your momentum of writing? So I'm back to talk about why we do actually need research or world building. I'm going to be talking to people who do historical work as well as fantasy sci-fi work, because both need world building of a sort, which is the research I'm talking about procrastinating with. We do actually need research and world building. We need to look into characters. What would they be like in this world, in this time, in this place? The era, the background historical events, the background scientific exploration, special events, things that happened in this place not too long ago that are in the public's mind, thematic pieces. This is something you want to be aware of as you go through and pull it down every once in a while, like a map in a classroom, to see if you can drop something in. And if it fits, push it back up and then keep going on your merry way. For example, I like to have social justice themes come out of the moments in history that I'm highlighting. So while I'm writing currently about the 1830s in Glasgow, I'm doing lots of research on finance and the new economic system, the Reform Bill, which changed Parliament and who is in power and what they could accomplish. These types of things will contribute to the themes. And if everyone is talking about something, if something is mentioned as a headline, if someone passing by on the street is talking about something, if you have those themes and you're thinking about them, they can drop down like that classroom map, and it will be available like when you're in drafting mode. Dialogue. What should the dialogue be like in your place or universe? So if you have a culture that is very linguistically sophisticated, like in a memory called Empire, you will be very careful about showing differences of how people talk for certain policy reasons. If you are in Glasgow and you've got people of different classes, then you have to show their dialogue reflecting that in the words that they use and the consonants or vowels that they change to fit their purposes. That's one of my favorite things, is hearing the voices of different places and communicating that to the reader. And is it period appropriate? So we'll get into tools for that later, but dress is another one. You don't want to be caught out by the costume historians so that they come out of the story and don't believe that you know anything about that time. Prices. Oh, dear Lord. So having worked in the UK in the 19th century, I'm a little bit more familiar with pence, shilling, pounds, but calculating that and knowing how much something would cost in a certain year is still a thing to do at the end of the book. It's not one of those things that should stop you, but it should definitely be an ending checkpoint. And maps. What is nearby? Is it a coastal city? Are you on the edge of a cliff? Where is the house in relation to the school? You should have maps that are either fictional places or real places that you can consult so that your world actually feels consistent, because you are not changing things in your mind as your mind furniture shifts around. So those are the major points: characters, era, special events, themes, dialogues, dress, prices, maps. Those are the kind of things that I have in categories that I try to keep an eye on and then do extra work before and after and not worry too much about during the process. All right, this is a long one, y'all. You may be curious why I've chosen this topic. Well, it's a question of Dr. Heal Thyself. How did I get here? I've got 5 books and a book of short stories, meaning I've done this several times. So why am I still at the point where I can't get myself to stop one phase and start the next? Well, as I said, it's a bit about fears and anxieties, and those can attack you at any point in your writing career. I think this is something that we always come up against and always find resistance in. When we're writing, when is it good enough? And when we're researching, how much is enough? How can we tell when we're really being truthful with ourselves? Here's my process just to illustrate how I got here and why this is my medicine. I have a book that I was working on in 2020, 2021. It was to do with the World's Fair in Chicago in 1893. I had done a fair amount of book reading for this, a fair amount of library research, and I even traveled to Chicago and bought books there on a trip to research some more of the issue. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the ending to work, to feel like it was the correct ending. And eventually I just left it alone. It is in a drawer. So that is the unhappy ending for the previous novel attempt. But this novel, the current work in progress, is not going to meet the same fate. And I'll tell you why. The lead up has been a bit different. Fast forward to April 2023, where I did an experiment for Camp Nano, which was writing a series of short story scenes to get to 50,000 words. And it sort of let me be free with what era am I choosing, what new thing am I doing. And it allowed me to write many different eras and to sort of find the topics that were inspiring me at the time, which was actually Irish Readathon books. So I read some books for the Irish Readathon. I had the background in Scottish history, and I sort of melded the two, which is influencing my current work in progress. I was trying to figure out the timeline, right? Because I did it in lots of different time periods, these short story scenes. I was being open, I was throwing spaghetti on the wall, it was drafting time. And so I really needed to choose. I finally chose, and I chose the earlier one. So that's what I'm working on now. I sort of marinated with that until Nano, so November 2023. And that is when I wrote the first draft of this current work. Unfortunately, I did it as historical fantasy. And when I did further research, further library research, further reading about the social justice themes that I wanted to highlight, I realized that for me, the magic aspects were too shallow. And so what I really needed to do was do more research to make it real rather than have an easy out of a magical ability. The more research I did, the more I realized that putting fantasy in there without a really heavy magic system made the social justice issues feel less important and less tough. And so I didn't want to do that. So that's what I've been doing since November, is looking up really boring, dry things to try to get at how my character will get to her goal. And so that's what I've been working on. After November and the research, I gave myself the gift of a research trip, which I took in February of 2024. I've got a vlog on it. I've got special research live streams where I talked about the books that I found and read. And I did some fairly specific research about Glasgow City, about certain individuals, about business journals, about personal correspondence, so that I could have samples of how people wrote, how they were talking to each other in personal correspondence, the issues they were concerned with at different levels in society, and that sort of thing. I finally was like, what am I going to do? I had that exact moment of, do I need to do more research? What am I doing with this? Where do I start? How do I change the draft that I have to the draft that I want? If we come to here at this Authortube Writing Conference moment, what did I do after I came back from the research trip? Well, I wanted to keep researching. I had books coming in from interlibrary loan. I had, oh, look at this shiny thing. Oh, look at that shiny thing. And finally, I think around end of April, I said to myself, what are my goals for next month? I haven't done monthly goals for a while. Here was the moment for me. And again, it's very subjective. It's going to be different for other people. But I looked at my publishing career for other reasons on the channel, and I saw I really wanted to publish something this year. If you break certain pattern, you'll never get back up to the same speed kind of feeling. That goal clarified a better timeline, and I thought I could do it. I could still do it, but I would need to start the second draft and get on it pretty quickly. And what did that mean? Well, can I do it by this time period? Can I just start with 30-minute sessions? Can I set a timer? So I really started slow, low expectations, flexible targets to get myself into not a rhythm, because a routine doesn't work for me, but a goal for the week. Then I started writing. So end of May to end of June now, it means that I'm getting momentum with this project. And with every little bit of momentum, I think the confidence rises that I will keep going, continue, and persevere. This is what I needed to get myself to get back into my writing, get back into a publishing calendar, and get myself the confidence to leave the research and get back to writing so that I could have a new work. What affects me in terms of writing will make me stop or make me hesitate are bigger things that make me question whether a whole plot point is correct. We're going to talk about how to address that feeling of not knowing if you're going in the right direction. All right. 3 down. Okay, so I don't think I saw any questions in the chat. So I'm going to just jump in with a couple things that I thought would be more factual for people. So when I talk about making the setting feel real, making the era come alive, I'm mostly thinking about sensory details, like what would you be smelling? What would you be hearing? What would you be stepping in on the sidewalk? What would you be feeling as, your hand reaches to grasp a doorknob or sit on the brick wall, something like this, so that you really feel like you're there. So I've got some examples coming up later, but I didn't go into detail with the examples because that is not the direction I was really focused on. But sensory detail is one big part of feeling like the research is solid. And the other one is issues. So in a similar way to C. Emma Longi's presentation earlier, where she was talking about how do you make it feel not preachy when you're using characters to show diversity. I think that when I don't want to be preachy, you have to make the theme that you're trying to get at central to the character's struggle or issue or obstacle, right? So it feels like something they're dealing with directly and trying to get around, rather than, someone talking out of the side saying, this shouldn't be so. So those things are what I'm trying to get research on. Like in 1832, what were people talking about? What was in the headlines? What was being debated in Parliament, and what was being shouted on the street? And so really getting those points in and feeling supported so that I don't have to go back and retrench and do stuff is where I was aiming to be. So let me just check if my starred comments are, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you like my book earrings and the book cover, maybe you want to check out the books. The feedback link, thank you, Joe. And let's see. Alex said, you're speaking to my soul. A lot of this is imposter syndrome. So I'm totally like, I see you. I see you there. Angela's saying, I hit that when I was making sure I got all the military stuff right in this book. Yes, because when you're researching, you want to have your details in a row that are big picture things, and then write and draft, and then be aware of things that might be wrong so that when you finish, you can go back and go, okay, am I sure this is right? Am I sure this is right? Is this the right acronym? Is this what the shoelace tie is like? Is this the timeline for a run or like the schedule for basic training? So, something detailed, right? So yeah, that's kind of the order that I've come down to, is like getting main points solid, drafting without fear, and then afterwards having the checklist and like the detail oriented stuff. Yeah, even in a fantasy world, Devin says some things need to make sense, like cultures. Yes, and so that's a big overlap with what I was talking about, issues, and feeling like the thing is central to the character's conflict. And then Alex also saying, powering through the first draft. If it sucks, that's okay. I have a sticky note in every writing nook in my house with that quote in it. Yes, I love that. Yeah, Joe's volunteering for helping with the Canadian military stuff. Let's see. Yep, Gwenna, I think might have been there in that chat as well. It's so good. I'm not sure how we got to cool runnings, but I love the energy. Oh, I didn't get to finish that comment. Yeah. Okay. So next I'm going to dive into when you need more research, some sort of silly examples, and then sort of explaining them. When you've researched enough, some silly examples, and then like how to actually tell, and then some tools for research. So that'll go a bit more into like some of the things I use for historical research specifically. So that's going to leave a little of you sci-fi fantasy people behind, but it's okay. It's only 3 minutes and 30 seconds, so don't worry. There's some signs that you need more research, and it's not procrastination, but you do actually need to be more precise with your setting and your details in order for the story to flow and feel authentic. Are your beta readers assuming the wrong decade or century, or something drastically wrong about your race of people? Do your characters feel or sound modern? If you see a Netflix adaptation and then read your book and go, oh, I think that TV show may have influenced how I wrote this character, and now they sound like they're out of the 21st century, something that is jarring or doesn't fit, that means that you do need to go back and research that particular point and maybe post a reminder, like a post-it note next to your workstation that says, do not use this word, or no hair flicking, or whatever mannerism that doesn't fit in the time period that you're looking for. Is there crucial technology for the plot that doesn't exist yet? Yes, that happened to me. I had a book. It will remain nameless. I don't know. It's in a trilogy. And I had a telegraph at one key point where someone was informed of something through telegraph because otherwise there was no time for it to happen. And when I was editing my own work, I found that the telegraph was not a thing for another 30 years. And I thought, okay, so this is one arm of the story that I need to delete and do something else with. So the story changed drastically because I had figured out that a crucial piece of technology was not there and it needed to change. That means you need to go back and either do some more research, find a different way to get the information, or change the plot, which is what I did. If any of these sound familiar, you legitimately need to go back and do some research, and most importantly, choose. I like to do plenty of research and then not make the decision. So what's important is to go with something and just commit to it and see it all the way through. And that is the best way to conduct your writing. Like it or not. Signs that you may have researched enough and you need to start writing. You've done so much research, you have so much knowledge, you can competently outline a 10-book series. That means you're prepared to write one book, and you should probably write the book rather than keep outlining at that level. Is the reference librarian taking lunch whenever you walk in the door of the library? You could probably do some more writing with all that knowledge that you've absorbed. Are you confident in the big ticket items, the place, the year, the class, the big events, the twist, and the motivations of your characters? Basically, if you do an interior scan and you picture the points that the story turns on in your novel, and you're confident that those are well within the period, well within the magic system, well within the universe you've created, but you have details that you want to be sure of, aesthetics that you want to be able to describe, that is the sort of stuff that you can do later. And it's probably not going to keep you from writing. It's actually something else that's keeping you from writing. So just like open yourself up to that, consider it, do a body scan, check in with yourself, however you want to phrase it, and then get back to writing. If any of these are feeling familiar, you're probably fine with researching, and you need to head to the page. Yep. But if the first one is true and you do need more research and it's not procrastination, here are some tools. What about tools for research? When you need to do research, what are some good tools to use? You know what we often forget? We've already made notes along the way. And while it may be true that when you write stuff down, it stays in your memory better, it's also true that you wrote it down for a reason and you might need to go back and read it. That's the reason. So look at your notes. If you take notes while you're researching, if you take notes while you're interviewing people, if you take notes while you're listening to audio podcasts about a topic that is relative to your world building, then go over the notes, put them all in one place, dedicate some time to go through and maybe organize them. Have you heard of Ngram Viewer? It's a beautiful thing for historical fiction. So this is basically telling you when certain words were more popular in printed media, because Google has enough of a catalog of printed media through time that it's a fairly good overview. If you want to ask, were people saying nifty in 1850? No. You can check if it was in any written material by looking at Ngram Viewer. This is very helpful for dialogue and not taking people out of the story when you're checking things at the end. Depending on your era or flavor of world building, there have been a lot of blogs that have been very helpful to me in terms of historical research, such as costumes and transportation. Feel like the two most common. So I will have to look up how long it took in a carriage to get from point A to point B, or when were they wearing bustles? That isn't really my period, but other fashion things that would be noticeable for the average viewer if they can tell that you got something very general knowledge wrong, then it might irk them, and just you put a little seed of, oh, do they know what they're talking about? So if you Google things, you'll have lots of resources of people who have done very niche research. And if you go through enough of these cycles, you will find people like Mimi Matthews, who has a whole nonfiction blog that is excellent, that is very well researched. She's also an author whose writing I love, so that's perfect. Podcasts also do this, but I tend to like it in blog form because I can bookmark it and then I have a source, and it just, the organization pleaseth me. Are you someone who likes to get the day of the week correct or the cycle of the moon correct when you're going back hundreds of years in history? Well, look it up on a calendar. Google will do the math for you. It will find a site that will do the math for you. Almanacs as well. And finally, newspapers. I was skeptical of newspapers.com because it's a paid subscription. I haven't paid for it, but I have used it to research things and picked and chosen from among the free resources to find the newspapers that I need to look at. And then I try to find that newspaper in a different place. So it's a matter of being creative to find what's in the headlines free. And there we go. So we have a break time again. And I was going to talk about the poll and I forgot. So I don't see any questions still. So I'll just continue chatting along. The poll results were 35% say, yes, I do know. Do you know what's stopping you when you get stuck? Not writing. Yes, but I don't know how to defeat it. And hopefully the last section of this presentation with like addressing calming fears and anxieties will help with that. Yes, and I have strategies to defeat it. 32% of you are on track and like have your ish together, which is lovely to hear. No, and it makes me crazy. Got a 19%. So maybe you need to hop around on some of these different AWC presentations until you find like, oh, eureka, light bulb moment. That is what's stopping me from writing. And then like you'll release whatever pressure valve was holding you back. And no, but it usually goes away on its own was 12%. So way to go. Some people are confident enough to like let it lie and then it goes away naturally. Ha! That would be lovely. I'm glad it's that way for some people. That's great. Let's see. The last section we have is going to be about examples and that calming fears and anxieties. The examples are short, again, not in detail. I could do a whole talk on just going into examples like we did with the first page critique panel. But this is just to give you like a sampling of what I'm thinking of. So I don't know, you can see inside my head. And then the final one will be about more fears and anxieties, and that may open up a little bit more discussion. So, yeah, Eloise feels me with the moon cycle in fiction and wanting to get it right. I love that. What else did I see? Oh, yes. For people who are interested in the Ngram viewer, this is something that Google has. It's on the books side of Google, backslash Ngrams. And so hopefully that will be helpful. Again, it's listing words occurrences in print, and then you have to check why it was in print. It may be for a different purpose. For example, nifty originally came into common parlance in 1920, but there was a spike in 2007. And as I said, it was probably a fintech bro doing a startup with like nifty shreds, something stupid, and then it failed because they all fail. So you do want to like back it up, get some corroboration for your historical research from Google. Like, come on. Yeah. But that's a good place to start. Ari is saying libraries have access to online academic archives at times. Read folks' history dissertations. Yes, I have definitely fallen through a tiger trap into different academic institutions' dissertations PDFs. Sometimes I've tried to locate and contact the people who had those dissertations, but it's not always possible to find them on social media or through their institutions. They're no longer there. So, yeah, it can be fun as a hunt, but like sometimes like, you can't really get the exact point you want, which is why it takes so long. But yeah, good point. Any other questions before I pop back in? It's hard. That's what stops me. You got a lot going on. I can understand that. We were talking about leaving feedback. I'm session 10. And yeah, Rita also saying yes about the moon cycle and the dates in the past. You can search for lunar eclipses that's very cool. Yeah. It's there. So mind that resource. And it only goes back to about 1500, which is fine for my purposes, but Devin does bring up a drawback. There is a limit to the written word being recorded. Yeah. All right. So let me launch into our examples, then we'll have our final section and then some more Q&A. All right, let's talk about some examples. So I've got a couple good examples and I've got a couple need a little tinkering, in my opinion, examples. I'm not going to name the names. I'm just going to say the pieces because I like all these books. We're going to start with the positives. So basically, we're going to look at pieces of writing that indicate they did their research. It's just enough. It's right at that point where you feel immersed, like you're dunked in the liquid of the period or the world, but not drowned, right? Not like you're being force-fed or waterboarded with historical information. Years later, she would ask herself, where did he find the wisdom? But that day in Houghton, she wondered where he'd found the cash. Tickets were a day's pay, each for a copper miner. She tried to talk him out of it. They both knew her mother would be infuriated by an indulgence like that. Nevertheless, her father told the balloonist, too, and handed him the money. Together, they clambered up and over the edge of a big wicker basket and waited for the other passengers to do the same. The balloon would be tethered, so you won't drift out over the lake. So we've got what class they are, the fact that there's a little family tension around money, the fact that they're in a country setting, the indulgence, the fact that he's a copper miner, the fact that there's a lake. There's a lot of orienting in this passage. And it was the prologue, and it was only page 3. So that is doing its job. And I just took that out to show you how wonderful it can be. Here's another one that I thought was pretty good. There are some identifying characteristics in this one. My name is William Monk. Sir Oliver Rathbone, he recalled the Sir only just in time to include it, asked me to call upon the Countess Rostova to see if I could be of assistance. The maid's smile lit him. She really was very pretty indeed. But of course, please come in. She opened the door wider and held it while he passed her and walked into a spacious but unremarkable vestibule. There was a large urn of daisies of some sort on a jardiniere. He could smell the rich, summery aroma of them. So this is 8% through the ebook, very early indeed. And we have daisies, a summery aroma, and the word jardiniere, which, I don't know. It's kind of like keening. To me, it's like a very much of a time and place. Jardiniere. Lovely. Immersed, but not waterboarded. Okay, so now we're going to try a couple that are less successful examples in my mind, and I will tell you what I might have changed about them. I know, I'm shockingly honest, she replied with an impish smile. Such an unfeminine trait, but being feminine is a great annoyance most of the time. What is your family like? Are they as outrageous as mine? So right off on page 21, we have establishing a character as outrageous, and she's mocking herself being unfeminine when really she does fit into the feminine sort of range of her class and her expectations. So it felt a little out there and a little obvious. I would have maybe taken out unfeminine trait. Here's an example which I think was too obvious for a reader, because what you want to do when you're balancing the amount of research and how much you share of the research is trust that your reader will understand without having to know the exact details that you looked up. He chewed and swallowed the final bite of his sandwich before answering. That's called a beat, by the way. I honestly can't say. From what I gather, Ireland isn't like England or even Scotland. The divide between classes is wide in Britain, but it's even wider in Ireland. And there is a great deal of unrest and unresolved animosity between Protestants and Catholics. But I thought the latest Catholic Relief Act was supposed to alleviate some of that. Gage's eyebrows arched tellingly. Another beat. In some ways, it only made it worse. So the beats are pretty obvious, but also the thing about Protestants and Catholics is so basic as to be kind of shoved in your face. And Ireland isn't like England or even Scotland. There's a difference between classes. It feels like the reader is being treated as very ignorant here. And so I probably would have backed off the latest Catholic Relief Act because of naming things that people aren't going to remember feels very teacher's pet-ish. Again, your mileage may vary, subjective. You can always choose who your audience is going to be. But I would say if you've got a lot of research, you have to be pretty careful about how much you put in and how much you're spelling things out that aren't really necessary to enjoy the story and feel like you've come away from a very immersive and educational and entertaining experience. All right, last one. When you've researched enough, then you return to what I was talking about, that point where I had a moment where I thought, I have this goal now. I need to get back into it somehow. I need to make it happen. Here's how I'm going to do it. Here's how I'm going to set myself up to get back into a writing practice and the momentum of finishing the book. Here are my tried and true sometimes ideas. Most of my struggle to get back into writing and get back into a regular practice is that I don't think that I have the content, the tools, the knowledge that I need to get going in that race. It helped that I was reading a craft book called Fearless Creating by Eric Meisel. And I will use his phrase for this because I think it describes it really perfectly. To return to that place is a matter of hushing. So that's one of the tools I'll discuss in calming your fears and anxieties. Holding, which means getting that research and having enough of it to feel confident, and feeling the wild. And that just means like allowing yourself to experiment and go big and capture all the things that are in your creative well and put it on the page. So that is where we want to get and what is preventing us from getting there. Tactics for calming your fears and anxieties and getting back to the page. So the title of this presentation, When to Stop Researching and Get Writing Again. I've got a few categories of things to try, but again, they'll be subjective. They won't work for everyone. They won't work every time. But these are ideas for you to take and experiment with. If you were in the same slumpy place that I was, how did it change for me? What did I do to kick myself out of the funk? Here are some things which I would recommend, which have worked for me at different times. And, nothing is foolproof, but there's some general categories and you can try something if it resonates with you, if you're in that same place. So number one is slow down. So that means go on a walk with no headphones, be in nature in a green, quiet place, sit on your floor. And if the problem is that your mind is racing with too many worries and things, get it out, put it on a list, dictate that crap, get it out of your head so that you can have a quiet place to rest. Maybe even take a nap. And then when you wake up in that fugue state, go right into a writing session and see how that works, because it's brain chemistry at some level, and let that ease you into a creative state. You can even use quiet music. The next category is speed up. Maybe it's fretful energy. Maybe you need to run or do something challenging with your body. Maybe if you bake something, which is like a lot of brain work with something totally different, it's calculating measurements, use prompts. Maybe you use pumped up music, and there's sprints that actually address flash fiction specifically on Saturdays with some lovely friends of mine. Do flash fiction where you are low stakes, forced to get something on the page. And it could be good, it could be bad, but the judgment is removed from the situation because it doesn't matter. It's just the work of a minute. Using a journal, if you need to get all the angry words out of your head so that you have room in your head for the story words. The third category is getting social. So sprints can also work for that if you're doing them together with someone, whether in person or virtual. You can go to a cafe and have a writing date with a friend, and then it's functioning both as an accountability partner as well as a sort of social environment and incentive to do the thing that you came to do. Or you can do it virtually where no one is keeping tabs on you. You They're just trusting your word of what you say in the chat, whether you're writing or not, right? But that can still exert some influence on your brain. You could set a weekly check-in for accountability. It's not necessarily the same time doing the same thing, but at noon on a Friday, you're going to say, oh, I did this week, and yay, you get a little dopamine hit for like being rewarded with social time with your friend because you've done the thing, and you measure up to yourself. So you're achieving your own goals in mini blocks, which is great. Or I did this week, and hey, here's my plan for getting the rest of it done today because I have a plan. You can use competition if that works for you. If you want to get to the same number chapter as your friend at the same time, use prizes. Maybe you reward yourself with baking something, for example, or going out to dinner with a friend, or going on a walk in a new place. Whatever it is, make it a sustainable reward, obviously. Talking it out, get it out of your own head where there may be gremlins working on it. Brainstorming with friends, you can talk out an issue that in your brain, it seems insurmountable, but once you say it, there are all these things you were assuming that other people, potential readers, might not assume. So there's lots more possibilities. There's lots more chalkboard space to work with when you get it out of your head. And that is the key to getting social and having that help you. And then the last category of tactics for calming the fear and anxiety is to indulge. Sink into the feelings, imagine what the worst possible thing could be, and then how do you protect yourself from that? Outside the purview of this talk, but if you're really going to sink into, okay, what is the worst possible thing, what I'm afraid of, how can I protect myself from that? There are ways to research that and, get yourself out of that panic mode. So if it's failure in terms of your book sales, if it's humiliation in terms of telling everyone that you wanted to do a thing and then not meeting expectations that you imagine people have, if it's disappointment and that your imagination is way out there and like the life experience to get there is not there yet, and so you disappoint yourself. Or if it's inadequacy, for example, you're doing this for a job and like you need to sell so many books before you can purchase something that you need. There's different ways to protect yourself in those cases, right? So a lot of them involve editing, I would say, because getting another opinion on your work and getting someone else to help you with a different skill set just does wonders for your writing. So if you're afraid of failing at delivering a good story, get an editor to look at your writing. If you're afraid of being humiliated by, I don't know, lots of inaccuracies in your writing, and that's why you're still researching, get an editor who knows the era that you are working in. If it's a fear of disappointment in yourself for not meeting your own goals, then maybe it's tracking your goals and doing a little bit of research in psychology and how that works, and maybe redefining your success in some way that feels valid to you, but also helps you get motivated and write. So for me, that was like tracking goals, keeping like a running tab on like, why am I feeling this way? How can I get to a different place? And then inadequacy, the fear of not meeting a goal because of your writing. I would say definitely ask for help in that case. It's it's a team effort. Expand the possibilities and you may find help or, something to comfort the anxious, fearful part of your writing heart. So again, these are subjective. They work sometimes for some people. And if any of those resonate with you, then try them. Put them on the list. And then maybe just take out, if you're in a slump or in a funk, try one of them and see if it gets you going. And then see if it works again. And then you're on your way because you've got momentum. I think that is the best feeling, to have momentum in a writing project. Because then you don't worry about researching too much. You know that you're set to go. And when you need a detail, you can address it at the end of the draft. And that's where I am right now, in the middle, doing the dang thing. And any of the details, I'm just putting to the side, confident that I can address them at the end because the main points are going to be solid. All right, there you have it. We have like 6 minutes for questions. And we had some good questions come up, so I'll try to barrel through them. Let's see. I had JD come in hot with a question as usual. Have you been writing and suddenly realized you need to research something else? Asking since you write historical fiction, and I suspect that happens often, all the time. So if I let me try to think of an example. It can happen while I'm reading a research book. It can also happen while I'm writing. If it happens while I'm writing, it's a list to look up a detail later. If it happens while I'm researching, it oftentimes means that I get out of the research book mode and I'll go online and try to look up a look up a book on the topic and like reserve it at the library or reserve it on interlibrary loan or like grab something I can see that it's applicable online as a resource and then bookmark it, and that's why I have so many tabs open. Yes. Yes, I probably have like 20 tabs open that are research related. Um, and just as a fun note, before I went live, I had to restart Google Chrome again because the stupid update thing did that. You can't upload anything to Google without updating, and I was like, "Really? Right now?" Anyway, my fault. Ari had a question. Approximately how much of your research do you end up using in your manuscript? I would say because I take such a circuitous route to figuring out, at least for the current work, figuring out what the actual conflicts are going to be and how the characters' backstories are going to be. Um, I mean, I'm absorbing, but sort of Tefloning a lot of information because I'm like, okay, I know this now. It's not going to go in the story. So, do you count that as research? There's a lot of dross to go through. So I mean, if you look at my library record, if you look at my storygraph reading record, like for the past 2 years, it's been stuff on this topic, and it started out really wide and then it's gotten more focused, but I'm still getting resources that only have, like 2 chapters out of a book that really apply. And so I'm narrowing it down and getting more focused, but I don't know how much you call that research. Like, I don't know, 14 books maybe at this point and lots of online resources. So, we'll see. Lauren Nettles, hello, had a question. How do you find the balance between researching a culture not your own, jumping into writing, and leaving stuff up to a hired sensitivity reader? Ooh, interesting question. Um, let's see. So, part of the reason that last book that is in the drawer about Chicago is in the drawer is because I didn't feel comfortable having the culture that I had written about out in the public. I didn't feel like I could end it in a way that was true and authentic to that struggle when it wasn't mine. And I don't think it's something that would have been resolvable by a sensitivity reader because I think the responsibility would ultimately be mine. And so, like, I didn't go through that process. Might have. Um, but in terms of jumping into writing, which is in the middle of your question, I would say um, if I got stuck in that book and wasn't writing or couldn't figure out the ending, maybe you've just touched on the solution to why I couldn't finish my Chicago novel. Maybe I should have hired a sensitivity reader to get that, like, guilt or that, like red flag on the horizon out of my consciousness because that's what was stopping me. I can't really answer that because that's a counterfactual. That's a could have been. Yeah, but great question. Joe's asking, how do you deal with doing research and then your beta readers say, that's too hard to believe? I recently had that with a bunch of music stuff like percentage of streaming sales or recording time. That sounds really bizarre to me because I would assume that they would, you know, defer to your expert um, detail like that. But Shannon was just saying, yeah, and that's just pop culture. Someone took her reference to almond milk in the 10th century and said, oh, that's so modern. It's like, well, no, it's so modern, that's so ancient that it's come around again. It used to be like a thing and people just don't know the ancient history. So part of that in historical is just like educating people, like realizing that is going to be a question or a pushback from public readers and preparing yourself to address that in a diplomatic way. Like, yes, a lot of us think that almond milk is something that's new and, industrial, but really in this time and place, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, prepare yourself, set your expectations low, adjust to where your reading public is, but don't feel pressured to change it, I would say. Mama Maggie says, I love flash fiction for breaking a writer's block. Yes, I did my flash fiction call out there, my shout outs. Sky Winter Books, hello, saying playing Sims. So when I said slow down or speed up, like there's lots of different activities. I didn't put the ones that I'm ashamed of in my suggestions box, but I definitely like zone out on TikTok and I definitely read to zone out. So like those are two things that like I wouldn't recommend to other people, but if you've used those as your coping devices for other things, like they might work just as well. Um, just with the caveat that sometimes if you're going to be playing The Sims, if you're going to be on TikTok for a long time, um, I would just say beware. Like if you depend on it too much, you're rewiring your brain. So use it for a short break to clear your mind, to focus on something else. And then maybe after 30 minutes, like turn back and say, oh, do I feel refreshed or do I feel even more grumpy and wizened and like a dead bug? Just check in and evaluate whether it's working. Yes, I suffer from rabbit hole syndrome. Yes, same, same, same. So we've got the feedback form that Joe put in the comments, and I'm just going to wrap up because we have 5 minutes until the next presentations start and just go through the rest of um, the comments that I didn't see before I hit the questions. Oh, hey, Brian. Quote being a dick, heaven forbid. Doing all the research you do, have you ever thought of writing a book of nonfiction or history? That would be serious imposter syndrome for me, I think. My master's degree is in international development and economics, and I have no interest in writing about that. I'm not well versed in it enough. The fiction I write is taking pocket historical events that are not very well known and translating those into the lives of ordinary people and how they would have dealt with those social changes. So I think I am a scanner, a breadth person that gets very interested in lots of things and would not be able to concentrate or go deep enough on one issue and keep myself interested in it long enough to write a book. Oh my gosh, or I must have seen all my crazy academic titles. Lovely. Hey, Cat Paw. Yep. 5-minute warning. Thank you, Esther. Um, we're talking about the feedback form. Yep, don't be ashamed. I know, I'm just being honest with y'all, like, trying to be transparent, like, that's what I do, but I wouldn't suggest that for other people. Yeah, use crochet, but then set a timer. Right, exactly. Yay! Cool, cool, cool. All right, everyone. We've got lovely presentations coming up in 3 minutes now. We've got AF Stewart talking about genre. We've got TL Russ Lifestyle talking about Notion and story Bibles. We've got Cleve Bourbon talking about self-editing. And the Writing Sisters talking about do's and don'ts for writing blind characters. So thank you so much for tuning in here. I will see you elsewhere on the AWC dashboard and appreciate you coming to watch and asking so many great questions. So take care, happy writing, and we'll see you at happy hour. Bye, everybody.